Hi, I'm Stephanie, owner of Crosscut Sewing Company. Crosscut Sewing is a sewing school and studio located in Melrose, Massachusetts. I've taught hundreds of students how to sew and helped them with projects, and I have written several patterns for those classes. When I write a pattern, I always try to think about the most straightforward approach. I also used to sew to sell at craft fairs and online. And I used to have to sew a lot of items really quickly. So I picked up a few tips and tricks from doing that, combined those tips with my straightforward approach, and came up with the pattern that we're going to talk about today, which is the fitted face mask pattern. So you can download this pattern from crosscutsewingco.com. I usually just print out the pattern pieces and read the instructions on my tablet. When you print this out, you want to make sure that you're printing it at 100% and not scaling it. And there is a test square right here that you can use your ruler and just make sure that it printed out at exactly 1 inch. And that will make sure that your mask fits as best as possible. There are 4 sizes included in the pattern. There's a child size 3 to 6, a child 7 to 12, an adult, and an adult extra large. The adult extra large is pretty large, but I included it in case you want to wear it over another mask. When I make my masks, I like to include a casing instead of sewing the elastic in. And this is for a few reasons. Elastic can be a little tricky to find, so if you've ordered some and you're waiting on it, you can continue to make your masks and have them all ready to go and just put the elastic in at the end. If you don't want to use elastic, you can always just use ties with this method. And it's adjustable. So most of us are making masks for others, and of course we can't be close to them right now and try to fit it on them. So we can leave it a little bit long, and when you give it to them, they can adjust it, make it a little bit tighter if they need to, and that way they'll get the best fit. I also tried a lot of different nose wires to get a nice tight fit around your nose. I tried pipe cleaners and twist ties and all kinds of things. I was worried about how they would hold up in the wash, and I didn't think they were all that effective. So the best fit that I found and the best solution is adhesive nose wires. So you can buy these. We have them on the website, and there's other websites that sell them as well, and they just have a sticky back, and you can just stick it onto your mask, and that way you can fit it to your own nose and get a nice tight seal. It's the most comfortable too. So I also find that I don't need it all the time. If I'm just going out for a walk or if I'm here by myself, I don't need it to be that tight, and I want to be able to breathe. But if you are going to work or if you have to go into a store, you might want that nice tight fit. I'm not a medical professional and I make no claims about the effectiveness of these masks, but I have done my research and I encourage you to do the same at the CDC website. Okay, let's get started. So, from a half a yard of fabric and 1.25 yards of interfacing and about 4 yards of elastic, you can get 6 masks. You want to use a very lightweight, non-woven interfacing. Woven fabric has threads that form a cross pattern, and non-woven interfacing is bonded and made of polyester, so it's a little bit more like a paper. So it provides a little bit more of a filter in your mask. I included the types of interfacing that I have tried in the pattern, but basically you want to look for lightweight and non-woven. I tried cutting my pattern pieces out of my interfacing and my fabric, but that was an extra step, a little more work. And then I tried interfacing this whole piece of fabric, but that ended up with a lot of these little wrinkles and bumps. So I found that the easiest way to do this is to cut both into 6-inch strips. And 6 inches is enough to fit any of the pattern pieces. So I'm just going to line this up, cut my 6-inch piece, and then I'm going to do the same with my interfacing. So it's folded here, so this is the long way. So I'm going to cut it 6 inches this way. So I have 2 long strips. All right, and then I'm going to fuse these 2 strips together. When you have a fusible interfacing, one side is bumpy or rough, and that is the glue side. So you want to make sure that you have that glue side against the wrong side of your fabric and just kind of smooth it out. So I like to just iron it a little bit on this side to tack it down, and then I flip it to the right side and press it from this side. And you want to go from the middle out so that you can push all of those little wrinkles and bumps out. And just give it a good press, and your interfacing will come with instructions on how to fuse it. So you can just check those out for the settings. All right, so now that that's all fused, we can cut out our pattern piece. For this, we're going to use the adult size, and I'm just going to fold this just enough so that I can fit the pattern piece on there. And if you see, it says to place this part on the fold. So I'm going to place that right up against that folded part right there. And you can trace this out and then just cut it with scissors, or you can use your rotary cutter, which is what I'm going to do today. So I'm actually going to cut both pieces at once. You need to cut 2 of these. And so I have my 2 folded sides right here. And I'm going to have my pattern piece right against that fold. And then I have my 2 pattern pieces all cut out and already interfaced and ready to go. One note about the interfacing: if you can only find a heavy interfacing, you may not want to do it this way, because then you'll have 2 layers and it could be a little hard to breathe. So if you only have a heavier interfacing on hand and you still want to use it, what you should do is cut out your 2 pattern pieces from your fabric and then cut out just 1 piece of interfacing. And then what you would do is just cut this right in half here. So you just cut it right in half, and then you'll have 2 pieces. And that way you can fuse it like this. So you only have 1 layer of interfacing in your mask, because those will go together, and then you'll only have 1 layer. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is put these 2 pieces together, right sides together. So just like this. And then I'm going to pin or clip these side seams. And we're just going to sew right along these 2 curved edges. And we're going to use a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And you want to make sure that you backstitch really well at the beginning and the end. And then I'm just going to do the other side. All right, and then we have these 2 edges sewn. So what I like to do now is, if you have some pinking shears, you can use those and just give this curved seam a trim. And just trim that seam allowance down. If you don't have pinking shears, you can just cut some notches into this seam. And this will just help those curved edges lay nice and straight. All right, so now I'm going to bring these 2 seams together. If you want, you can press them. You can press one seam one way and one seam the other way. I'm just going to line these up and nest them together. So you can see this one's going this way and that one's going the other way. And you can pin or clip that, and then just make sure you have them going in the same directions on the bottom. Now I'm just going to make some marks. So I'm going to mark about 5/8 of an inch in from each corner. And this is where I'm going to start and stop sewing, so I leave an opening for my casing. So a little bit, about 5/8 of an inch, so a little bit more, that 1/2 an inch would be here. So I'm just going to go a little bit more than 1/2 an inch. And I'm going to do that on all 4 corners. And so on the top, I'm going to sew from one mark all the way to the other and backstitch at the beginning and the end. And on the bottom, I'm going to sew from this mark to probably about here. And I'm going to leave this open and then sew here. So this part here will be open. And this is so we can turn it around. And I like to leave it here. I don't like to leave it on the seam because it just makes it nice and neat when we have to press it later. All right, so we're going to sew that with the 3/8 inch seam allowance. Just going to get that nice and flat. Okay, and there we go. So once you've gotten to this point, we're just going to turn this right side out through the opening that we left. And you can use whatever tool. If you have a chopstick or a knitting needle, or if you have a seam creaser, you can use that just to get this all poked out. And if the ends where the casing air come out, you can just kind of tuck those right back in. Just tuck that right back in. All right, now we're going to give this a good press. And I'm going to make sure that I tuck in the fabric where that opening was left. All right, and now I'm just going to top stitch this. So one thing about when you do the mask this way is that the fabric is the same on both sides, so it can be tricky to tell the difference between the two sides. And you always want to have the same side of the mask against your face. So what I do is I sew with a different color thread in my needle and in my bobbin. I usually have a nice matching thread in my needle so it looks nice on the outside, and then something that stands out a little bit more on the bobbin so that I know to wear that side against my face. So I'm going to sew along the top and the bottom about 1/8 inch in from the edge, and I'm going to sew the side casings about 1/2 an inch in so that we can fit our elastic through. And that's it. your mask is all done. And all you have to do is add the elastic through the casing there. I usually add about 10 inches for a child's mask and 12 for an adult, and that seems to be enough to give them a little extra to adjust. So you can use a safety pin on the end of your elastic, or if you have one of these bodkins, you can use this to just guide the elastic right through. And then you just need to knot these ends and then slide the knot into the casing, and your mask is ready to wear. I hope you found this helpful. My contact information is on the website and in the pattern. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me, and I hope you stay well. Thank you.